But then we come to verse 6, and I underline verse 6 in my Bible because here it's very clear, without faith it's impossible to please God. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. But it's much deeper than that. What verse 6 Paul is trying to say is this: it's without faith you can't please God, because when you come to God, you must have the faith of knowing really who he is. And recently when I've been preaching, I've been overseas in Central Asia, and this is one of the issues that I've been dealing with, is that we need to know who God is, because Daniel, in Daniel 11, I think it's verse 32, Daniel says, those who know God will be strong and do exploits. So knowing God is knowing really who he is, what he can do, what his ability is, what his capabilities are, that pleases God. So without that kind of faith, you can't please God. God isn't pleased just with words, with chants, with repetition. That's what I don't like about so much organized religion, because so much of it's chants and repetition. It's not coming from a person's heart. But what we need is a relationship with God that isn't lighting candles or reading prayers or chanting whatever. It is the fact that when we come to him, we come with the knowledge of who he is and what he can do. And we come into a relationship based on that kind of knowledge, the knowledge of who he really is. And without that kind of faith, it's impossible to please God. For those that come to him must believe not only that he is, that he exists, but must believe who he is and what he is. If you're going to come to him, and that means in fellowship, but also in prayer, because I believe that there's a very strong point here that when we come to God in prayer, we need to know who he is. When I pray in the knowledge that God can answer. And it's not a question of doubt. Can God answer? Can do this? I know he can. And I want him to do it because I know who he is and what power he has. And that's an essential part of my praying. So when I pray in faith. And that's, I think, what makes my praying sometimes quite different to other people. I do seem to get a reputation for slightly unusual praying. I mean, even the last time I had cancer 20-odd years ago, when I had the lung cancer nearly 23 years ago, and I remember that when I said to the Lord, Lord, I'm not going to take any medical treatment, I actually said, Lord, if you don't need me, then take me home, because Paul says it's better in heaven than down here. So I said, just let it be quick and take me home. But if you have not finished with me, if you have more work for me to do, then heal me, because I cannot continue preaching a God of power and healing and miracles if I don't demonstrate it. Do you understand? So that in prayer, it's very much, I knew that God had power to heal me, and I put, all right, I gave him the choice. Do you need me or not? I can tell you that God made haste to heal me. And that's more than 20 years ago. And when you look at what's happened in the last 20 years, you know full well that God hadn't finished with me and hasn't finished with me yet. So all of this is an expression of our faith in who he is, faith in the person, faith in the ability, faith in the power, faith that in his faithfulness. Faith in his faithfulness. And so we must believe that he is, and he's a reward of them that diligently seek him. In verse 7, by faith being warned of God about the flood, of things not yet seen, moved with fear, prepared an ark to save his house. And he condemned the world, it says, and became the heir of righteousness, which is by faith. So to Noah was faith that when God warned him of the coming flood, he actually literally believed, it says, with fear that the flood was coming, and built the ark. Now, do you see what faith is? That's another aspect of faith, that he so believed in a future that God was promising. And I mean, it must have taken him years to build the ark. I mean, you see, the size of it and the fact it could contain so much, that wasn't done overnight. And so all the time he's building it, of course, he was criticized because why'd you build this massive boat on dry land, which is ridiculous. But he was prepared to accept the criticism because he was convinced that if God had warned of a coming flood, that it would happen. So we need to be aware of God's judgment coming and of his kingdom. But this is a different aspect of faith. So faith actually with Noah meant that he got on with the job and built the ark. Now in verse 8 it's different. Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place that he would afterwards receive for an inheritance, obeyed and went out not knowing where he went. Abraham, that great leader, was called to leave where he was and go out into the wilderness. And he went and didn't know where he would end up. But yet, by faith, he went. And in verse 9, he stayed in this land of promise, a strange country, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who would become the heirs of the promise. In verse 10, for he looked for a city which has foundations, whom builder and maker is God. So he lived in the wilderness, leaving his substance, leaving his mansion and his cars and his houses and all the rest of it. He left that to live in the wilderness in faith that he would enter the inheritance. And it was exactly the same in verse 11 with Sarah, who believed to conceive and have the child. Now my time has gone. I will be continuing this, and it's fascinating next time. God bless you.